the kind of quality of experience that's being created using a game engine is amazing. It's like TV quality, film quality material. And that's got me thinking, well, actually, where is the boundary of what gaming is about, what game creativity is about? And so why don't we look at people who are doing things in other media? So, Anil, do you want to talk a little bit about your background and obviously what you guys are doing now?
Cool. My name's Anil Mistry. I am the MD of Good Catch. We're a game development company that's owned by the Endemol Shine Group. So we can do deals with IP owners for TV shows, animations, cartoons. We build mobile free-to-play games out of those, as well as creating our own IP games. Throughout my career, I've been kind of lucky enough to work with a lot of TV brands, film brands, and sports brands, making gambling games, mobile free-to-play games, and lots more.
Donnie.
I'm Dauna de Veer. I'm Business Development Manager for White Wolf Entertainment. So we are an IP owner. Our main IP is World of Darkness, which has brands such as Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Magic the Ascension, Refuse, etc. And we work with partners to create products in four different main areas, which are video games, obviously, events and live experiences, physical products such as merch, books, and everything in between, and TV series and films.
Actually, I'm going to ask a quick question. Any Vampire the Masquerade players out there? Yeah, we're not alone. Chris, do you want to explain your background?
Yeah, mine is Chris Birch. I've got a company called Modifius. I started in the music business, and then my first licensing experience was with a company called Joystick Junkies, which I set up in 2000, which we licensed Atari for the first time, and Space Invaders and other video games brands to make cool, fashionable T-shirts. And after getting sick of T-shirts after about 13 years, I went back to my first love, which is tabletop games. And we started on Kickstarter actually 5 years ago, almost to the month, and with a thing called Acton Cthulhu, which is World War II and the Cthulhu mythos. And we raised a load of money, set up a company, just me and my wife, and then took on lots of licenses, went through Thunderbirds, Star Trek more recently, and Fallout. So we've had a lot of experience in kind of growing through that process of our very first baby license to the much bigger ones.
I just have a very fond memory of Jerry Springer turning up at one of the Joystick Junkie parties about 10, maybe 15 years ago. But also, don't be fooled with the Thunderbirds license. It's not just a kids' game. It's a brilliant board game, genuinely brilliant board game. Marcus, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I'm the MD of Blue Donut Studios, and we make comics. We also make card games, but we use augmented reality and virtual reality and blend all these things together with animations. We also do storyboards because we're storytellers, making the comic books, but we do stuff with pop videos. Like we work with Joss Stone doing videos. The Love We Had, we worked with them on that, and we work with other properties as well.
So, I mean, as you can see, we've got lots of people from lots of different industries, all of which cross over with game. And they all have kind of fundamental kind of creative and narrative and kind of experiences that are emotionally charged. You know, that's the kind of common thread, I would say, between them. So what I'm trying to explore is particularly the kind of root of an IP, how we look at an intellectual property and how it then is delivered in these different media. So what I'm thinking is, you know, think about a show or a game or a comic book. Why would you make a game out of it? I don't know, do you want to have a go at that?
Well, there's
See, Earth moves when you speak.
Absolutely, sorry. Why would we make, well, from our point of view for games, I mean, working with IPs brings a lot of value in terms of awareness for the brand. Certainly in mobile games, there's so much competition. There's so many games released every day, every week. An IP, a good brand, can kind of help you kind of stand out, kind of look over the wall, and people will take notice. Also, if the IP and brand are good, you've got a fan base there. So if you can tap into that fan base early enough, you can get good feedback as you're developing your game, whether it's in beta. And when it launches, you're in a good position to get off to a very good start. I guess the pitfalls of that are that that's only going to last for a certain amount of time is going to give you a good start. But if your core game underneath isn't any good, you've got no chance of kind of extending the long tail of your game.
But how do you look at a show or something like that and work out that there's a game to be had in there?
Okay. So, I mean, I've worked with game shows before, and typically that's very, very easy. If the mechanic's good and if you can translate it well with the controls that you have available to you, it's pretty much a no-brainer, so long as you can make, the content and the questions that go with it. We're currently working with the Simon's Cat brand at the moment, which is very different. And there's a little universe that exists. You've got a character that doesn't speak, which is also a cat. And usually within that universe, if it was any IP, you can look at that universe and go, well, we can make the cat run, we can make the cat jump, we can make the cat catch things. All of a sudden, mechanics come out of that, and usually that's your starting point. You just have to think what you think is going to be appealing. And also make sure that the IP owner and the brand owner are on board with what you're going to suggest as well.
So it's kind of like keeping true to the authenticity of what that item is, that big IP is.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you start doing something really, like we wouldn't make a mid-core game out of Simon's Cat; it just wouldn't work. So it kind of lends itself to a more kind of casual offering. Automatically, that takes you down a certain path, and the IP owner, if they care about their IP, would want you to make something that's going to augment their brand, their overall offering.
I'm just thinking about Simon's Cat. He's bad. He's back. He's got bigger guns. It's not going to happen. So let's go to Whitewall. So obviously, this is another experience. It's obviously a game. It's a game I've been playing for longer than I remember. I think I got like the first ever copy of Magic the Gathering in the UK, which was on sale. That's how sad I am. But it's already a game. It's already an experience. Why would you try to take something like that and do a video game where you can't do the things which make Vampire Magic or go, all
I would certainly like to comment on that. So adding to what Anil said, because that's very important reasons. We have plenty of developers coming to us wanting to create games for our IP because they have been fans themselves for over 20 years, and now they can add to that world that was already part of them or their hobby or of their lives. So they want to create games out of sheer passion. And that's amazing. We like to work with people that are fan of our brands like we ourselves are. So that's great.
So it's about bringing out the emotion of the people you're working with as much as it is about realizing the brand that you're representing. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
So, obviously you're coming from a slightly different angle because you're the kind of guy making the games that Donald's talking about. So, obviously things like, Star Trek, okay, I can kind of guess you've got a certain interest in that. But is it the opportunity as it arises? Is it finding the IP? How do you actually decide what you're going to chase?
As a business owner, let's face it, you end up working 9 a.m. on a Sunday, 11:30 at night on a Saturday. So it's got to be something I enjoy or I love. It should be commercial, of course. We're a business, so it's got to make money. But I've long since given up trying to do stuff that's just for the bucks. Otherwise, I'd be earning a lot more money somewhere else, not making board games. Like John Carter of Mars is a big Kickstarter we've got on it right now. And it didn't have any artwork. It's very well known amongst the sort of science fantasy fan base. Obviously, there was a Disney movie, if you've seen that. It was okay, not too bad.
Not too bad.
But it's not like a major brand like Star Trek or Fallout. But it's something I really cared about passionately because I remember reading the books as a kid. And so I went after that and we got that and have been able to do sort of a really good line of products around it. And so when I have to work on a Saturday night, I care about it and I don't mind doing it. So there's a real balance between, is it a big audience? Has it got artwork? In our line of work, we need a lot of assets. So we're looking for things that have got, Fallout is a fantastic example. Huge range of artwork in, the video games, assets, the in-game models can be, you can use those to inspire the 3D sculpts for the miniatures, that kind of thing. So that's a perfect example, an enormous audience that we can tap into. And John Carter is the complete opposite. But in both cases, it's something we really care about and love. So.
But I think that's the interesting thing is because obviously the passion is the thing that's driving John Carter, and I completely understand why. I mean, I remember some of the covers of some of the, the old books. I've probably still got them somewhere, and it's when you look at them, they're kind of very stylized, and but you're kind of constrained because that's an expectation a whole bunch of people have of what that should look like, and yet the art you've got available is so limited.
Yeah, John Carter's probably a good example because most people think of the artwork, and the artwork, much like Conan, was very much drawn after Conan was live. So classically, with John Carter, you see, virtually naked people or naked people. There's a famous Dejah Thoris book which has pictures of Dejah Thoris clothes and pictures of Dejah Thoris naked. Yeah. And that's not what he described. He described them as being nearly naked, which is someone who wrote at the time in the sort of in that period. If they'd seen some people on the beach at Ibiza, they would be nearly naked, but we know they're not. So it's very much you have to treat properties like this with real authenticity. And we engage with the estate. We work with the with scholars of the work to ensure that we're getting across the true spirit of the product. And it's something you have to work very closely with the license, is to be seen to the fan base to be authentic. And that's very hard with Star Trek because everyone has a different experience and a different passion about Star Trek, and it's very hard to keep everyone happy.
Debate Discovery over beer later. So, Marcus, I mean, the same thing for you. I mean, is it mostly your own properties that you're kind of realising from comic to game, or are you working the other way as well?
Well, I've done both. And funny enough, talking about an old science fiction property, I did some sketch cards for War of the Worlds, and that's one of the things is you really want to be respectful for that whole tradition of that property, and research is a really good thing as an artist. You want to spend lots of time going in what has gone before you. And so on the comic book side, one of the things we were asked to do was to create a graphic novel series for the Legends of Beavis, which I went, what, Beavis and Butthead? No. Yeah. So Beavis, the Legends of Beavis was a medieval story that apparently Henry V absolutely loved. And so Arts Council England and National Lottery and the council that we were working with at Art Centre asked us to work with a historian. A fantastic story. And again, we had to make sure we captured the story, made sure we understood the legends and the culture around it, but understood the audience that we were supposed to be reaching out to, and understand their sensitivities as well. So that's quite tricky.
Again, I think I'm hearing a pattern. We're talking about finding the right IP with the right audience, the right design. There's a lot of things to juggle here. So how do you get started if you're reaching out for a new IP? What are the decision-making processes that you go through for when you're working? What's the thing that drives this is the right product at the right time?
I don't know if someone else wants to go.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I mean, because we started, I'd had a lot of experience in picking up licenses for clothing, but, when I started the business 5 years ago, it was me and my wife Rita in a little basement flat in London, and yes, we'd funded this game project on Kickstarter, but we were a nobody, tiny little, really not even a business. So, how on earth do you get to the point of CBS going, yes, okay, we'll give you Star Trek? And it's quite a long process. So we had to, I was looking at apps that had interesting stories and, various kind of projects that were quite small, but I thought, that would make a good game. And, but I had a few rebuffs at the beginning because, who are you? And, we don't really know what we want to do, or it didn't really make sense for us. And then I got lucky, and there was a brand called Mutant Chronicles that was a movie a few years back. Okay. All right, an okay movie, and was kind of like a competitor to Games Workshop in the 90s. And I knew the company because we talked to the girl there about licensing T-shirts from her when she was at Midway. And they said, well, look, we've got this old brand, if you're interested in doing something with it. And I was like, wow, I love that. But I remember playing the game, and I had all the books and the figures. I said, yeah, we'll do that. And that was our next project on Kickstarter. We raised £150,000, and it catapulted us into suddenly we've got, not a famous license. Now we've got a license. So I used that. And I went in. I also had been talking to ITV about some projects, and I said, Thunderbirds, would you be up for doing a board game? And I was, look, we're already doing this licensed property, Mutant Chronicles, and oh, yeah, okay, you sure you don't want the new one? Because, no, I want the old Thunderbirds. And so that was a lot cheaper, of course, because they were like, who wants the old Thunderbirds? We're doing this big, new, big-budget series. So that was my second license. And so it's a trading game. So when I had Thunderbirds, I then got Conan off the same people who own Mutant Chronicles. So now we've got 3 licenses. And then I went to DreamWorks and I happened to meet the people by accident and said, oh, look, we're doing Thunderbirds, we've got Conan, we'd love to do Kung Fu Panda as a big board game. And then before you know it, I'm talking to CBS. Oh, we've got all these other properties. We would love to do Star Trek. That took a long time. But it's very much this, don't go after the big names if you're just starting out. Go after the little...
But I find it really interesting. It's not just the serendipity of the meetings and the people you knew. It's being able to plan how you then build on each moment. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, I mean, and also you need to know what they're looking for. They're not looking for someone to go, oh, I could do this great game, but I can't pay you any money, and we don't want to pay much percentage. You need to know what they're looking for in terms of a commercial agreement. So that helps having that experience. But it doesn't take much to find that out, and there's people, just ask around, people will give you advice. But once you know the kind of level of expectation that you are, and there's no point doing it unless you can guarantee a certain amount of money, because why make the game in the first place? So it's having that level of professionalism to approach them, but then being able to know, okay, once I've got that out, I'm thinking ahead. I'm not just doing this project. I'm thinking, I mean, already as a business, we're like, what are we going to do in 2020 and 2021? So.
And I think there's an interesting sort of balance, isn't it? There's a whole the commercial thinking, commercial planning, but also the personal passion. I mean, I'm sitting here with the Rocky Horror Show, license, and trying to make a game out of that, and it's like constant battle between trying to make sure I've got the right game for the right audience, the right plan, but also not just thinking about this game being the thing. It's how could I then take the mechanics of that game and then reapply that to other licenses. So I'm thinking, I think we're all thinking about these things in a very complicated and complex way. So when you've got somebody coming up to you and say, I want to make Chris says to you, I want to make a board game using, I don't know, the Mummy. What was the money one called? I can't remember.
Mummy the Resurrection.
That's it, Mummy the Resurrection. Let's say you want to do Mummy the Resurrection for some reason. What are you looking for if somebody comes to you and says, they've got a passion for this particular thing? Maybe they've got some track record, but what are the things that are going to make you say, yeah, that's the guys I want to see?
So oftentimes when developers come to us, they already have an idea in mind. If they are passionate about the brand, they already have an idea in mind, which is the game they always wanted to play, but never got made, and they now want to make that game because now they have the capability of doing it. So they come to us with a lot of experience and a lot of, so this game would be great to be released now because this and this and that. So they come with a lot of information and yeah.
So I need to come with you my Fisher Kings scenario. I literally wrote a Fisher Kings module for White Wolf, which I never ever did anything other than play with my mates. No, but is that the kind of thing that happens though? Do you genuinely get people who've just made that thing that they did to their mates and then come to you and try it on? Or are you getting much more professional kind of people who really do understand the economics behind the structure of what they're trying to make?
So most of the time we get super professional people. A great part of that professional people are also great fans of some of the brands. And then there are sometimes that we have pitches from fans that are still not, very much into the video games industry or the other industries. And those are the pitches that have the flaws on on the commercial side of that. It's like they would like to see that game, but they cannot prove that actually that game would be successful.
And what sort of characteristics are you looking for in the mechanics that they talk about? Is there any kind of pattern for what really feels like a World of Darkness experience?
So every game is different, every game line that we have 8 different main game lines, and we advise our partners as to what would be more interesting for one or the others. I was saying just a while before that, for example, an isometric kind of game would probably not work for Vampire the Masquerade because you lose on the personal horror. It needs to be, closer to the scene, to what's happening. But it would work great for a Werewolf the Apocalypse or Hunter the Reckoning kind of game because they go in packs, so you can see like all the pack mates in there. So we help them to make the most out of the IP with the technology that they're using, the genre that they're, of their choosing. that's part of what we do as licensors.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, it's understanding the right experience for the brand, which I think is resonating throughout. Because you can see how you might do an RTS for Hunter, because you'd be talking about taking over domain and having your clan and all this kind of stuff. But that probably wouldn't work for Mage. It probably wouldn't work for Vampire. Although there are aspects of Vampire you can imagine really working in that way if you're looking about political and social power. And that political social power hierarchy. And to me, what this says is it's all about really thoroughly understanding the IP and its value, and how that value transcends into, in particular, for the guys in the room, video games. So we kind of talked about kind of the decision-making. I mean, did you have any kind of...
Well, the only other, I mean, from a slightly different perspective, it was more that when we're selecting IP, whether that IP is globally known is a big factor for us. Obviously, the IP has to lend itself to games, which we've already said, but having a global reach, it costs pretty much the same to make a game for one territory as it does globally. So from a business perspective, that's always a big thing. Certainly, making sure your tier 1 territories are covered in terms of popularity of that IP. Other than that, from a more kind of development perspective, when we're considering even IPs and games that go with that, we're thinking about the tools that we have, what we've done before, what can be reused, how efficient can we be and build on what we've got, rather than having to start from scratch every time. If the mechanics so left field to what we've normally been doing, it's a bigger stretch there for us.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting problem, isn't it? I mean, I'm thinking about Nick at Exient, and the guys have made this Dancing with the Stars game, which is called Strictly Come Dancing in the UK. And of course, it's the same game, but because it's got a different brand IP elsewhere, you've got to... Well, I don't want to talk for Nick, it's not in the room, but my feeling is that there's a lot more complexity when you're having to deal with rebranding and localization like that.
I mean, the rebranding thing is the worst. I've worked in scenarios with ages ago with the Deal or No Deal brand, and it's it was a huge show, and it was in lots and lots of different territories. But from a development perspective, it had a different logo, different set, a completely different completely different look and feel in every single country.
Wow.
So, but the mechanics the same. So, I want to make things efficiently and well, but I couldn't, and the costs just spiral out. And at the end of the day, it just took a lot more work.
And as I recall, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire had a similar problem, but it was more that there were different hosts rather than different
Actually,
art style.
I would argue that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire did it the best, and I don't think many brands have done it well since. I mean, that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Pretty much that the set and the logo was the same everywhere you went. When I'm talking to the kind of IP owners in our shareholder company, I'm always pushing, going, I know you've got this great new show, but don't let them change it. And they still don't get it right.
I was also thinking about things like Jeopardy and Price is Right and stuff like that, which are enormous games in the States. And we all know them, but we don't have the same emotional connection with them, or at least not anymore. And so I know that, is it Sony had that license for a while? I can't remember. Yeah. And that never seemed to really go elsewhere. I remember them trying to sell it to me back in the Java days. It's like really old times. Anyway, so let's kind of move forward. So obviously we want to give these guys in the room some advice. What lessons from your areas where you sit in this juxtaposition between IP and video gaming, from your experiences, what lessons should these guys be paying attention to? What's the thing that they can benefit from? What advantages are they by thinking about the IPs they work with in a wider way? Marcus, do you want to start?
Yeah, so from my perspective, first of all, I think we'd all say the same thing. You've got to be really passionate about the IP. You've got to love it. But the other thing is, you can get involved in conversations with IP owners, and they will think, you know what, let's throw it at them. So you've got to be very careful about when you have a conversation. I remember having a conversation with a large filmmaker of a big tentpole production that sucked, and I'm not going to say what it is, but basically they said, we'll do you a special price on the IP, and you can have exclusivity on these territories. And we kind of thought, oh, this is really good. And then we sat down, in the cold light of day, we thought, this is going to suck. We're going to lose a lot of money on that. So you've got to be very careful on your investment, where you put that money. But if you're passionate about the IP, you can find that it will really help your business.
I think for me, the key thing is, and I've worked with a few licenses now, and it's people who are willing to work with you. And there are a lot of big companies out there that will happily take your contract and your money and just go, look, send me a check in 3 months, send me another check in another 3 months. And that's all they care about. And you really need someone who's willing to work with you. And so we've been actively, I found actually video games companies are generally the best to work with. That's why we've, done our deal with Fallout, and we're talking to other people. Because they're often gamers. They play games by their very nature. There's often tabletop gamers in the business, and they understand the more contemporary social media and marketing and promotion, whereas the bigger film companies are very much dinosaurs of the 70s, and they're still struggling to, I've had a conversation recently with a very major brand, and I said, well, you've got a giant Facebook page, so will you be able to promote our project there? Oh, no, we can't. We don't promote any of our licensees. I was like, so, okay, well, that's a no then. And it's just like, why don't you? Well, because then we'd have to promote all of them. Well, you probably should. So I'm really not interested now in a licensee, and you're not the one pleading to work with their brand. You're bringing something very special. You're going to give them extra exposure to an audience they don't maybe reach at the moment. And you really want to find someone that is going to work with you. As Dana was saying, they're very good at, White Wolf are very good at helping advise people and guiding them and supporting them through their audience. And there are a lot of companies out there that want to work with you and help you and use their audience to support you. And so I'd always say, of course they're a project, and I've done deals where they're not particularly supportive, but because we really want to do the project and we think there's a really good commercial value in it. But try to find companies that will support you through their community, through their social media outreach, through their marketing campaign as much as they can, because that's a much healthier relationship, especially when you're committing your business behind their IP.
Yeah, a part of that, I completely agree with you both. And the part adding to what Chris said is the approval process. So, of course, the licensor needs to approve what you're doing. And I would recommend you to make sure that you partner with a company that doesn't give you headaches every day, because the approval process is just a nightmare. So even though maybe the IP from the outside might seem super juicy and interesting, maybe working with them is not so interesting. So I would encourage you to find partners you really like to work with, because it's pleasant. So yeah.
Yeah, I concur with everybody else's points there. I think often in your example, you're kind of halfway through and then you realise it's a bad thing that you're having to get approvals every week about the very, very minutest things. I guess I would urge people to really try and look at the IP from the IP owner's perspective. What do they want from their game? If they're passionate about their brand and not just trying to farm it out for a bit of cash, then they're going to want to uphold their IP and their brand values. And where does the game that you're pitching fit alongside everything else they're doing? And I think often if you do that, I think you've got a better chance of success of getting the IP.
So I think that's a really interesting area. I'd kind of like to explore a little bit further, because it seems to me that there's a whole bunch of things that the IP owner needs to bring to you. And what strikes me, is what is that responsibility? I mean, is there ever any funding anymore? I'm assuming not. Is it all about just the cash? What are the constraints like? How do you operate within those? So I'm kind of interested in, what do you think is the IP owner's responsibility? Who wants to start with that?
Can I start with that, actually? I'm actually in this situation at the moment, and we're currently working with an IP holder that's had a storybook IP that was serialised in the 90s, and it sold 30 million copies worldwide. So it was a big IP, and they actually came to us because they want to resurrect the IP, because they realised the timing's right. And that's the thing, is you learn a lot from them about the business side, but so obviously I'm interested in the business side, but as one of the creative team as well, it's working with that IP. You feel like you've got the crown jewels in your hand, and it's really exciting that you pick that up, because then you sit with these guys that have come up with an IP that people like. So when you come with them and you sit down with them and they share their experiences, They also talk about their characters. And for me as a storyteller, I love that. When they say, oh, they did this because that, and the other. And it might not be there in black and white, but they know when they wrote all that stuff or they've drawn the characters, that was behind that's in their heads. And as a creator, when you're working with them, that's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar experience with the Rock Horror side because we're basically given carte blanche. And it looks on the surface like they're not doing anything. But actually, it's just really nice to be trusted. And we've already had the conversations about what the feel and the emotions are. We tell them what we want to do, and they just go, yeah, that's it. So, and just having that kind of dialogue is really nice. But sort of focusing again on this idea of what they're bringing to it. So in my case, they're not bringing a lot directly, but they're bringing a lot emotionally to that support. What about yourselves? I mean, what kind of things do you expect the IP owner to provide to you?
Well, typically, a well-organised asset library always helps, and you'd be amazed.
Let's get out of brass tacks. Asset library.
Yeah, it's like you'd be amazed when that doesn't happen, and also a menu of what you can do. I mean, I was actually really shocked. I mean, I did mention film companies are not great, but the CBS were fantastic with Star Trek. This is a major company, and we are a very, very small deal that was being done during the 50th anniversary, and of course they're preparing for Discovery. So. I sort of said, what can we do to help? And they actually sent me this long email where we can do this, we can put you on StarTrek.com if you give us this banners. I was blown away by the amount of stuff they could offer. So I think if you're an IP owner, you should be considering about all the stuff that you can do that costs you nothing, that actually benefits you to say to the whole world, look at all the other stuff that we're doing around our universe. And so kind of having... The more you've got like that, the more it makes it easier for companies like us or you guys to go out there and do these deals and make fantastic games, because we can focus on doing what we do well and not trying to root around some movie stills or ancient piles of comic books for, to scan artwork and things like that.
So I think IP owners need to protect their brand, and they need to try to make their community, their fan base happy. And they need to make the lives of their partners easy so that together, you with the partners can actually accomplish those two first goals of protecting the brand and making the community happy. And this implies a lot of things, like not making a nightmare of the approval process, of helping the developers that might approach you that are not so familiar with your brand, so you will educate them in, how your brand is, and all these kind of things that help in the end, or having the library assets that Chris mentioned. These will help in the end to accomplish your goals and make everyone happy. Yeah,
I think that's a key point. At the end of the day, it should be treated as a partnership, the whole thing, whether it's from the art assets, allowing access to audiences on social media or whatever community that's available. And, commercially at the end of the day as well, it's in everyone's interest that it succeeds. So if you don't get on with the people, that's going to be a problem.
I found it interesting because I was at the brand licensing event end of last year, and there seems to be an awful lot of people whose job titles are licensing, who don't really seem to have any passion for the brands that they're representing. I mean, that was my personal experience. I mean, there are very good exceptions, but it was fascinating how much were basically agents trying to get the percentage, and their interest was the percentage. Is that something that we should be watching out for, wary of?
Yeah, I mean, I think totally. I mean, they are agents, they are salespeople, and they've got targets to hit. And I see it from when people from our parent company are licensing, and some are really into what they do, and some are just going, I really need to get this number. And that's the only motivation. So, yeah, do you want to work with a partner like that? I'm not so sure.
Because these people are generally doing T-shirts and backpacks and toys, and I don't think a video game, in particular a board game, or even a comic, is just another T-shirt. It's a creative outlet for the identity of that brand.
And often it goes on for a very long time. It's not about the year that you do the deal in; it's about the next 3 or 4 years. It's a different mentality is needed.
I would like to say in protecting the brand, you need to have a grand vision as the IP owner, and have products that are cohesive among them, and that they work together, and that are true to the brand, so that people don't, when you, for example, let's see you release a new game based on our IP, people don't think, oh yeah, that's another game that has the brand slapped on it, but it's not true to it. So that's part of it. If there's no passion, if there's no cohesiveness, that's a problem.
Just find the right person, I guess. I think at the end of the day, it might be that we want to get past the licensing guy and find the product owner, and the product owner, if it's anything like any proper trained professional marketeer, will really absolutely love every aspect and detail of that game, and will worry about the pixel being wrong in the way the eye is shaped. They're the guys I want to talk to.
Yeah. So when you go directly to the guy that's created the IP, you do have a wonderful experience. But they will tell you, that's not quite right. They wouldn't really do it that way, and you kind of. It is a negotiation, and you do have to realise, sometimes there is give and take on both sides. And when it does work well, you find that you are allowed to contribute. And
that's a magic feeling when you get to contribute. Yeah.
I think, a good agent, and I work with internal licensing managers often, who are a buffer between you and the creative people, and it is great working with creative people sometimes, but they can be sometimes a little too precious. And a good licensing manager is the guy that's like, it'll be fine, just get on with it. And it's like, you've got it, it's got it. He's just being a bit of an idiot, don't worry. And of course there's a real balance between getting the brand right and no, that doesn't need to be separate because that's going to cost you loads of money. I get that. And there needs to be someone who understands the commercial realities of you as a licensor, that you obviously want it to get to be right, but sometimes a very good example is the heads of our little Star Trek figures. We did these 32mm scale Star Trek figures, and of course the actors get to see them and go, oh, that doesn't look like me. And it's like, well, hold on a minute, actually it's about 5mm, not even that tall. So actually we have to then resubmit it with a kind of a quarter next to the head, just so you can see how big it is. And the licensing team are like, that's fine, whatever, don't worry about it. And so they kind of, if you were dealing directly with the talent, you would be constantly going backwards and forwards. And as great as it might be, it's not always the best
I think that's probably the best defence I've ever heard for the licensing teams, and rightly so. And I think that's all a perfect place to end the panel. Guys, thank you so much for taking part, and I hope that was useful and interesting. We're going to now break for lunch. Don't forget that this is only possible. I am obviously obliged to remind you this session is only possible because of our sponsors: Playaz, Unity, Facebook, Mobile Vista, Product Madness, British Columbia, Vancouver Economic Commission, Upcloud, Appadale, Papaya, Outfit 7, Mobi, Smartly.io, GameSparks, Mopub, Scientific Revenues, Orca Mobile, Delta DNA, First Parallel, Liftoff, Playdemic, and Hutch. Thank you.
Cheers.